When I first went on the road full-time almost 8 years ago, my monthly budget was only $1,300 a month. Could I live on that now? Well, maybe. A lot of people do. But other people spend a lot more. So today, I'm going to be talking about all things budget, no matter how often you travel and what your lifestyle is. So you know what options are out there for you. Happy Sunday, everybody. It's Robin with Creativity RV. I hope you're all doing well out there. I'm doing great. I am out boondocking, which is the way that I like to travel. Before I discovered this life, I didn't even know that was an option. I thought that I had to stay in a corporate job that I hated in a stick and bricks because that gave me protection. But ultimately, I decided that that protection came at too high of a cost. There's being alive, and then there's living. And I discovered that I was doing the wrong one. I can live the life that I want to right now and still have a safe, comfortable monthly budget that keeps me on the road and keeps me out of debt. I'm going to go through my personal 2025 budget, and then I'm going to show you 4 other budgets from other travelers that I've interviewed. To me, there are 2 categories when you look at an RV or van life or just nomadic budget. The first thing that I look at is the initial expense of getting a rig. That's usually an upfront expense. And the second thing is your ongoing monthly budget that depends a lot on your lifestyle. Now, I'll spend a minute on the initial expense, but you guys don't need me to tell you that the average cost for an RV in 2025 is between $30,000 and $600,000 according to the RVIA. Because if you're looking at this lifestyle, you already know that, and that range of numbers is not really helpful. What I am going to do is go through 5 quick points I think are important to consider when you're looking at the initial expense of a rig. The first thing is, whatever your budget, there is an option for you. I know people that tent camp, car camp, all the way to people that live in $1 million schwanky RVs and everything in between. If you want to get out on the road, don't let your budget stop you. And if you need a job to be able to be on the road, don't forget to check out my book, Work From Home While You Roam, The Ultimate Guide to Jobs That Can Be Done From Anywhere, which is a resource guide of hundreds of online jobs all kinds of people can do to make extra money or to make a living while they're on the road. The second thing is, when you choose your rig, don't just think of the upfront cost of buying that rig. Also know that the rig that you choose will greatly affect your monthly budget going forward, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Let's say you spend $50,000 on an RV, and you decide it's not for you, and you sell it a year later for $40,000. You did not spend $50,000 for that RV. You spent $10,000 to be on the road for that year. And one more final note about the initial expense of a rig. That didn't happen overnight for me. After I decided this life was for me, I sold a house and put that money aside because I knew I would use most of it to buy my rig. Then I got a part-time consulting job so I could pay off my debt while I created a mobile income stream. That took 2 years for me and allowed me to buy my rig outright and not have any debt. Now, I know your situation might be different, but if you follow my channel, you know that I've switched rigs over the last 8 years. This is my 6th rig, and if you want to know why, you can go back and watch all the videos about that. But I have crunched the numbers recently, and for me, if I sold this rig right now and did the math, this RV life has cost me just a few $100s in housing expense a month. It has been way less for me than rent or a mortgage would have been, but that's because I've been able to spread that initial cost over the 8 years. So financially, it has made great sense for me. And if you want to know what my method has been for deciding the financial value of a rig and what the value is to sell it and how I negotiate, I did a video called Cruise Don't Lose, which I've put into a playlist to back up just this video. All the videos I've done in the past that relate to this are in there, including that one, how to negotiate, my past budgets, insurance, and how to find camping. All of that is in there, so check it out. in the playlist. Here's the blank template that I use to create my budget with a bunch of different categories. I'm going to fill it in now, but please note, I don't have things in there like health insurance, alimony, child support, expense for your habits or your hobbies. That's all individual. You can add that into your own budget. Okay, here's my budget. It's not $1,300 anymore. After 8 years, I'm now at $1,840 a month to live on the road full time. That is a very comfortable budget for me. You can see here on the top line that I spend about $140 a month on insurance. According to progressive.com, a Class A is the most expensive thing to insure, followed by a Class C, and then Class B or B plus rigs like vans. Your insurance expense is going to vary wildly based on what state you're a resident in. For things like registration and your driver's license and insurance, you have to choose a resident state. And of course, they decide what the rates are in that state. And also they look at your age, your credit, your driving record, your coverage limits, and your cross lines. So it's going to be really different for everybody. But I will say this, if you have an RV and you're not using it all year, look for an insurance company that allows you to suspend coverage. Different companies will call that different things, but basically it means that while it's parked or in storage, you're not paying for all of the things like liability you need on the road. You're just keeping comprehensive on it. So, fire, flood, hail damage, squirrels eating the wires, things like that are still covered, and that's much less expensive. I still carry that on my fifth wheel, which is in storage. I pay $50 a month for that, but I'm selling that fifth wheel next month so I can get rid of that expense. The next expense you'll see is for registration. Now, registration is usually paid annually depending on your state, so I've just prorated it out here by month. For me, going forward, I'm going to spend about $60 a month in cost for registration, but I'll tell you it was a lot more for me when I first got this rig, because in Colorado, which is my resident state, they charge whopper sales tax. The next line item is maintenance, repairs, and parts. And if you have followed my channel, you know that I have really gone through it, but everybody does. Even in my new rig, which I'm going to show you next week, I have had to already repair things. On average, for maintenance, repair, and parts, it's only cost me about $200 a month. Okay, the next one is gas, and that is completely independent depending on the type of rig you have and how far you're traveling. Now, to help you guys out with your budget, I've created this little table that tells you how much it costs you to go a certain distance depending on what kind of gas mileage you get. So in this example, I'm using $3.50 as the cost of gas. This is going to vary a lot by the state you travel in. Let me tell you that I just left Colorado last month, and gas was $2.95 there a gallon. Then in New Mexico it was also $2.95, but when I got to Arizona it was $3.95, and in California it can be $4.95. So just keep that in mind. But in this table you'll see that I used a value of $3.50 a gallon. So if you have a rig that gets 20 miles to the gallon, you can see down below here that you can go 1,000 miles for $175. The next expense in my budget is for propane and electric, which you can see is $0. In this rig that I'm going to be showing you next week, I have no expense for those two things, which is pretty awesome. But I'll tell you that when I've been in my fifth wheel for the winter to visit family, my electric and propane cost together was about $350. Now let's talk about the expense for camping, which to me is the same thing as housing expense. For me, in my budget, you can see it's only $200 a month, but that's because I like to boondock. Now, if you're not familiar, I've put a video in our playlist that explains it, but over half of the United States is public land. And a good part of that public land is available for us to camp on for free, usually, up to 14 days. We pay for that with our tax dollars, at least for now. That doesn't mean that I don't spend anything on overnight stays or camping. I like a national forest campground, and sometimes I'll stay in an RV park if there's no other options. Or recently I stayed at a spiritual nature retreat that allowed camping for a donation. There are lots of options out there. Overall, I spend about $200 a month, And usually I go months without spending anything and then spend the money on someplace really amazing. Now, if that's not your style, take a look at this. According to cruiseamerica.com and outdoorsy.com, in 2025, RV parks nightly are going to range from $20 to $100, and monthly they go from $400 to about $3,500. But keep in mind that if you go monthly in an RV park, you usually also have to pay for electric. National forest or state park type campgrounds are usually $20 to $30 a month, and there's also overnight parking, which varies. Personally, I love a rest area and a truck stop. Every once in a while, I might stay at a Cracker Barrel or at a Planet Fitness or a Harvest Host, and then I go in and support the business. The bigger you are, the harder overnight spots are to find. The next category in my budget is for passes, memberships, and subscriptions. For me, that's about $280 a month if I prorate it out. I get a National Park Pass every year. I have a Harvest Host membership, and I also included my streaming services in there, things like Netflix. The next expense in my budget is for data or internet. Now, when I lived in a sticks and bricks years ago, I was already paying like $150 a month for internet through cable. Now that I'm on the road, I spend $210 total, and that's because I have a Verizon hotspot on my phone, and I also have an unlimited AT&T router, and I have 50 gigs of Starlink just in case. Now, you might not have to have internet at all. You might want to go out into nature and just unplug because I'm still working. I don't have that option. So for me, this has to be part of my infrastructure expense, my ongoing expense. And believe me, I am happy to pay it to stay on the road. The next category is foot and entertainment. By the time I caught this, I had already been 3 slides in, so I like to have a little foot with my entertainment. I don't know about you guys, it sounds delicious. But for that, I spend $500 a month. I also spend $25 a month as a solo person on the road on average on laundry. And the final category is storage fees. Actually, right now, I do pay a couple of $100 a month to keep my 5th wheel in storage. But like I said, next month I'm going to be selling it. So I didn't include that in my 2025 ongoing budget. So in total, as a solo working full-time nomad, my budget is $1,840, but that's not going to be the same for everybody else. So let's get into some other budgets. The first example is from my friend who is retired and lives full-time in an RV park. Let's call him Joe Bob. He's got a great 35-foot 5th wheel, and to ensure that, he spends about $160 a month. Now, you'll see right below that, I also noted that he has to have a car to get around and insurance for that car, and so I put the expenses for those right there since they're not RV expenses. On average, monthly, his registration comes out to about $50 a month. But maintenance, repairs, and parts is only $25. His rig is no longer under warranty, but Joe Bob is one of those people that fastidiously maintains his rig and can fix just about anything. So that $25 he said on average is really just for parts. Joe Bob also spends $160 a month on gas, but again, this is for his car because his rig doesn't move, it stays in the park all year long. His average cost together for propane and electric is $195 a month, but this changes depending on the season. He said he pays about $115 for electric over the entire year, but his propane varies. He's in Colorado, so in the summer he only spends about $15 a month for propane, but in the winter he spends $200. Even though he's full-time in an RV park, his rate varies based on the season. During the winter he only pays $750 a month, but in the peak season in summer he pays $850, so the average every month for him to live there is $800. His cost for passes, memberships, and subscriptions, he put at about $100. Even though Joe Bob is in a park, he also has to pay for internet because, like a lot of parks, his park doesn't have great service. So he pays $120 a month for unlimited data internet. For his foot and entertainment, he spends about $650 a month, but he doesn't have to pay anything for laundry because he has a washer dryer in his rig. And at his park, he's able to get a storage unit for $25 a month. That puts his total budget at $2,288 to live full-time in an RV park. The next example is much different. Let's call this couple Mork and Mindy. They work and travel full time in a minivan that they built out for only $5,000 inside. After that initial investment, they did spend a little bit on solar and like a microwave, but overall their initial investment in their rig was low, but they do spend more on their travels because they travel a lot and they have a lot of fun. So let's go through what they spend. They spend $110 a month to insure that car, and their expense for registration on average is about $50. Now they do have expense for maintenance, repairs, and parts, but that's on the car only, and on average they spend about $100 a month on that. Now you might be surprised that they spend $800 a month on gas, but like I said, they like to go a lot of places. They don't want to stay in one place for too long. They are on the road to see stuff, and they do. Like me, their cost for propane and electric is zero because they have solar. Now, Mindy told me that they rarely pay for camping, but they do like to stay at a harvest house once in a while, and they support the host at about $30 a night. And on a rare occasion, they'll stay in a hotel. So their average housing expense or camping expense is $458 a month. For passes, memberships, and subscriptions, they pay about $200 a month. But for phone, data, and internet, they spend a whopping $360 a month. But remember, this is a couple who both need to work full time, and they have to pay for the phones and the data to get that done. Laundry for both of them each month is about $50, and they do pay for a storage unit back home, which is $135 a month. Now you might be surprised that their budget is $3,063 a month, but this monthly expense is offset by the low initial investment that they made in their rig, and it's a budget that lets them go and do what they want and see what they want. The next budget is from my friend, we're going to call her Sue, who only travels part of the year. She has a GMC Sierra, she throws a pop-up camper on the back, and she goes out in boondocks or likes to stay in like national forest type of campgrounds. She spends $100 on insurance, $25 on registration. Maintenance, repairs, and parts for her pop-up camper alone is only about $25. She spends $400 while she's camping on gas. She spends nothing on propane and electric. She budgets about $200 a month for camping when she stays at a national forest campground. Now you'll see here she doesn't have anything for passes, memberships, and subscriptions, but that's because it was added into another category down below. For data, internet, and phone, she spends $100. Food and entertainment, she only spends $200. Laundry, she said, and her apps, memberships, and going out and having fun, she spends a total of $200. And so Sue's budget to travel part-time while she's traveling is $1,250 a month. And the final example is totally different. Let's call this couple Chad and Becky, who have a very schwanky Super C that they only take out periodically. They have 2 houses that they go back and forth between, and while they're camping, they actually paid for a very nice membership at an RV resort. Chad and Becky and their big land yacht spend about $110 a month on insurance. Registration for them comes out at about $60 a month. Again, this is just for the RV. For maintenance, repairs, and parts, it comes in at about $80. Now, their rig is new and it's under warranty, but nevertheless, these rigs can be expensive to maintain, so they do have that in their budget at $80 a month. Gas is about $500. This is their expense to drive their Class E just to that resort and then to drive back home. For propane and electric, Chad and Becky spend about $20 a month just for propane because their RV resort does not charge them for electric on the months that they're there. Now, Chad and Becky spend about $1,420 a month to camp at the RV resort while they're there. Like I said, they paid $12,000 for their resort membership. But in addition to that, they have to pay $600 a year in dues and $29 a night while they're camping. So I added up all of that expense and prorated it down to the months that they're actually camping. Not including the resort membership purchase, they still spend about $300 on passes, memberships, and subscriptions. They spend $160 for Starlink Roam while they're at the campground, and then they suspend it when they're not. For food and entertainment, they spend $800 a month, but they have no cost for laundry because they have a washer and dryer in their rig, and they spend nothing for storage fees because they store everything that they need in their house. So their total is $3,450 a month for the months that they're RVing. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do share it with your friends. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave your comments below. And if I've missed anything, please let me know. Again, I'll see you guys all next week with a tour video of this amazing rig, and I can't wait to show it to you. Until then, everybody out there, have happy travels and be free.